Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Stephan Hawkes. If you haven't checked out part 1 of the interview, please do so. If you don't know already, Stephan Hawkes is a phenomenal producer who's produced the likes of Attila, Vitriol, Chelsea Grin, and is in his own personal band called Shelter Red. Check that band out, it's pretty cool. In this video, we go over the importance of creativity in the studio, what every member needs to be prepared to jump into the studio, and advice he has for aspiring producers and engineers. So without further ado, let's jump into part 2 of my interview with Stephan Hawkes. When is creativity warranted?
When you're making a record that's got room to be creative. I mean, even if you're making, the thing for me is like, if I'm making a record that's simpler, that doesn't, you go, oh, great. So you just plug in the amps, they sound good, and you're done. It's like, it's kind of almost the opposite. It's like when a musical part is really, really simple and you go, oh, so I just got to play the roots on bass. It's like, actually, this part's so simple, you're actually going to have to write a sneaky good bass line. And that's, if the part's crazy, you're going to write a crazy bass line, and that's easy to follow. But it doesn't always work like a one-to-one thing where because it's simple. So again, if you're making a pop punk record, it's like, well, pop punk music isn't the most complicated. So in order to make it interesting, you're going to have to be more creative. That's my feeling on it. And again, there's tons of cookie cutter records getting made, and I don't know whoever makes these definitions of what's a cookie cutter record or whatever. It's like, that's not for me to say, but the goal of making any record is keeping people on the hook for listening to it for as long as possible.
You've said this multiple times. Working together.
Yeah. So it's just like, if the pop punk record sounds cool with this weird tone in the verse and then big stock, awesome, and then it drops down to a weird tone and the bridge has a weird squirrely effect on a solo. Like, if that's what it takes to make a pop punk song dynamic and interesting, you should probably do that.
So it seems like whatever it takes to keep the listener or even the band or even the person in the studio with you on the hook at all times.
Yeah. And you should be, obviously making records for, you've seen it, like, it can be a little bit of a slog. Like, all right, we got another song of this to do, and we got another song of this to do. And like, if you're doing like a big long record, but it can get a little bit tedious, I suppose. But like, you shouldn't ever just be like, we don't need to try anything creative, we just need to get it done. It's like, those aren't like, maybe to some degree everybody does that. We all backslide a little bit as our ability to like be creative gets, drained every day. But like, every day, at least it's always been my opinion, it's like every day I wake up with X amount of creativity or X amount of juice in the tank. It's like, I got X amount in the tank every day. The amount of that you have will determine, what you can get done in a day. And you got to be willing to empty the tank every day if that's what's required out of the day, which most of my days, I feel like it's required for me to just go on in and empty the tank.
You give it your all.
Yeah. You just have to but you have to, like, what my all is versus someone else's all versus the guy you're tracking. It's like, we all wake up with a different, not every day we're as good a version of ourselves as the previous day. So we all wake up every day with like a certain amount we can give and a certain amount of brain power and a certain amount of juice and
different amount of tea.
Yeah. Just a different amount of creativity and like energy to put towards something. And so you shouldn't, if you just don't have much of that, you're probably not going to, like, 8 hours into a session, go find some crazy pedal that you've had for 20 years that the band hasn't heard of and try it. But like, you should do your best to not, to work on stuff until as long as you're viable to do so.
Well, I guess you're one of the first producers we've had on the channel. And I guess the biggest question is, because I don't really have this opportunity to ask a producer, what do you think is the most important thing for a guitar player to have or to know in preparation for taking part in this process with you in the studio?
So the big thing is to know, it's going to sound so stupid. The big thing is to know how to play your parts. Now that doesn't, and be rehearsed. Now that doesn't mean everything should be written in stone and you shouldn't leave any opportunities open to be creative. Like, ideally, for the producer, it's like the guy should just be able to play his parts. Now, that's nice. If you're not sitting there coaxing parts out of him or trying to just sit there and go, I don't know if he's bending his stuff, that frees you up to be a little more creative and stuff. And if it's like getting every chord shape is going to be like a nightmare, yeah, any human being's maybe going to go, well, maybe we're not going to make it to the creative part here. So the better you are at doing it, but then there's another level. It's like being good and ready is one thing, but being adaptable and open to what could be is the other thing. So if I come up with an idea and you like the idea, how quickly can you turn that idea into something, into a real proof of concept or whatever? So, yeah. And so that's the thing. It's like, well, this is a cool idea, but like, if you think it's a cool idea, but nobody knows how to do it, it's like, I can only do so much. Like, I can't just, it's like, okay, I need you to sweep pick or something here. You know, it's like, I don't sweep pick when I play guitar, but like you do. And so can you sweep pick this melody and this instead of this melody, or do a harmony here? You know, that's just like a metal example. But that's kind of for any record you're making. It's like, they got to be able to do it within a reasonable amount of time. Otherwise, there might not be the budget for being super creative, because we're not all just on a high wire. Just
because, like, being in here with you, it feels like you're willing to go down the rabbit hole, and you're also willing to let that snowball for people. And if you're able to push the snowball faster, you get the biggest snowman.
Yeah. You just like, a guy comes with an idea, and then you do it, and then what can we do to make more? And we can do to make more, and this guitar sounds better. It should turn into, I mean, I at least not should. It just, I like it when it turns into a little bit of like a mania. You know, I like that. It doesn't mean I want to do it every day or that it's appropriate. Some days you're just doing work and everybody's just got to be good.
Yeah.
But when you get on a heater or whatever you want to call it, like, you know, you want that to be able to unfold. So you want it to be like, you know, let's see where this goes. And if the player can adapt, or they can even just take instruction from you, well, you'd be like, it's kind of like this. And maybe I'll even grab a guitar and kind of show it. And they're like, oh, okay, one of those chords. If we're speaking the same language and they can get it there, then like, we should hear it. Now, even if it's not the idea. So that's the reason you got to be adaptable, is because you're going to have bad ideas. If it takes you 45 minutes just to hear the idea and then it isn't good, you're going to stop. Like, you're going to get gun shy, and you're going to stop even trying, you know, because it's like, oh God, last time I had that idea and it took us an hour and then we didn't even like it. It's like, we don't really have another hour and another hour. It's like, you know, and again, sometimes people are willing to just spend those hours, in which case I'm down. I mean, I've spent 6 hours tracking one guitar part before to get it just right, on a handful of occasions in my life. And it was not me. Wasn't me forcing the other people necessarily against their will to do it. It was everyone agreed that we would stop when we were done.
Yeah.
So usually that means like that we're in agreement that we're just going to go down this to the end, and there's not going to be any considerations for budget or time or whatever. Like, it's getting paid for, or it's signed. This is what we signed up for.
Because I feel like that's what makes the best records, because you have to cut corners on ideas, you have to cut down on time you spend with the reamps, with the creativity, everything, in sense of if you feel like you have at least, even if you have to cut off at 4, well, now you're rushing.
Yeah.
If that's why I feel like I've seen you do a lot of your sessions at the back half of your day, because you can, you know, when you're creative, you're not sleepy.
Yeah, I never get tired if I'm doing stuff. I mean, it's to like a, you know, to like an insane degree. And that's the thing, is like, if the stuff does get repetitive and boring, like, then it is harder to do. It's like, you know, when you work at a place that's boring, whereas we work at something that's fun, you're not going to mind going to work. It's the same thing. It's the same idea. Yeah. And for me, like, if there's stuff to be done other than the random odd day, you know, if you wake up feeling sluggish, or you got a headache, or you're sick or something, even then, when I'm sick, sometimes I have just the most ridiculous session. I mean, you NyQuil me up and get me in the studio. I've had people straight up take advantage of me on some NyQuil. I've had people come in to do mix notes, and I'm like, shouldn't even be there. And they're like, will you try this? I'm like, sure, man. Like, even then, like, it takes a lot. Like, I gotta be like debilitated or something in order to not be down to get creative. And if it needs to be done, you know, So I always say is like, if a band's got to leave it for tour at 6 a.m. the next day, whatever we have to get done leading up to 6 a.m. is what's going to get done. Like, and that's historically, that's the way it always is. Now you try to be good with time management and you try to have reasonable days so you don't get burnt out and all that. Like that goes without saying, but you don't, it's not like, all right, 8 hours. Like we were in the middle of this idea. It's like, it's not the way it works. Like you got to see it to the end. And
I see.
It doesn't mean we all got to go to dinner and we all got like, we all got to do, things. We're all like people, but when you're making a record, if there's stuff like that stuff, usually, unless you got a hard out, you just should follow it through to the end because, if it's cool, you should follow it through the end no matter what.
Yeah. Usually wrap off the question is what advice do you give to beginners? But I guess the other question that I would ask you that I feel is like more important is what would you tell yourself what would you tell your younger self in this journey of music or guitar tone or engineering or?
I'm trying to think of an answer that's not too.
I know it's cheesy.
No. Well, I'm trying to think of an answer that's not too in the weeds because most of mine would be like, gear related or don't buy that or just buy this stuff and be happy. I tell my younger self, buy more guitar amps. They're only going to go up in value after 2021 or whatever it was. I don't know. I don't know what I would tell myself like personally.
What do you tell your assistants or?
Well, that's the thing. So it'd be different. Like what I would tell them is different than I guess what I would tell myself. What I would tell people starting out is like, you really got to dive in. You really got to like make records and you should try and find, again, this is not even great advice, maybe from a business standpoint, but like try to find the people that are crazy like you're crazy. And it isn't always easy to identify because I don't come off as a crazy person. But I have the most fun making records for people that are crazy in the best possible way. And so that's my thing. That's why I make crazy records and again, I don't want to make all crazy records and you don't have to be crazy in order to, that's just, not what I'm saying, but it's like, find the people. So if it's like, if you're a guy who's all about hooks, if you're like a pop guy and you have this kind of hook, like you need to find people that think like you think and you got to pair up with them and you got to work with people. So like, don't work against the things that you're good at. Mm-hmm. You really should lean into you doing what you do. I've said this plenty of times, like from a career trajectory standpoint, I definitely tell younger people, it's like you maybe zero in more on a niche and do that, which is the opposite of what I have done, arguably to my detriment, which I don't view it that way. I don't actually care, but objectively speaking, you could argue that by doing so many things and doing crazy niche records or whatever, that, it's not great from like a branding perspective. And like branding was never my strong suit. It's not like, I don't want to be this guy. It's like, I just want to be he's the gets results guy. He can do it guy. Like he can make our record guy. That's it. But that's very, very broad.
Yeah.
So my advice is that's just because of who I am. So like nobody who like learns anything from me should do what they're going to do based on who I am. Mm-hmm. They should do it based on who they are. If you are just, I love doing doom rock and I love doom rock all day and I never tire of it, then you should record doom rock bands almost exclusively. Like if that's the way you're wired, don't go against the way you're wired. Mm-hmm. So if you just love hooks, you get with people that love hooks and you write sweet hooks with them. Whatever you do, you should do. You'll be more happy and fulfilled if you don't fight whatever is inside of you to offer to people. I make a lot of records, but there's plenty of records I have no business making. And if I tried to shoehorn myself into doing those records, like I'd be letting a lot of people down. So you sign up for the stuff that you have in you to make. And it's all about like making the artist's dreams come to life. And if you genuinely think you're the guy that can do that, you should be doing that. But there's only so much you're actually going to be good at, and you shouldn't overpromise and underdeliver. You should overpromise and overdeliver. Like you should, no matter what, you have to nail it. You took their money or you told them you'd do it. The second you tell them you do it, that's it.
Your word.
It's over. Like you told them, it's like, well, they're not paying me a lot. That's not, you agreed to it. Like you agreed to the money that they offered you. So that discussion is done. You don't get to now go, well, I'm not going to try on this because I'm giving them a little bit of a deal. It's like they didn't ask for, and if they ask for that, they say, hey, you don't have to try as hard, but we'll just pay you this much. Like, okay, then maybe that's the case.
The expectations are set.
Then they're set. No revisions. You get my first draft and you're only paying me this much. But if you take the money, you're on the hook. Whoever you're like, if you sign your name on the dotted line, then whatever that record entails, you got to do. And it's not done until you deliver on it. And as long as you do that, you'll have people coming back and you'll have friends for life and clients for life, or not even necessarily for life. Clients go elsewhere and then they come back. Sometimes they don't come back. It doesn't really matter. Like maybe they found somebody that makes the records better. Maybe you shouldn't have been the guy making the record. Like you can't, it's not a jealousy thing. It's not a I'm better than everyone else thing. It's not even really a competitive thing. It's like the guy who should be making these records should be making these records. And I can only make so many records a year. I'm definitely the guy for more than enough records than I can physically make. But, there's definitely enough records out there in a year where I can be swamped and make records that I should be making. So I shouldn't be making records that no one should be.
Yeah.
When you hear someone make a record and you go, oh, like they blew it. It's like, we all blow it a little bit, but like sometimes the guy shouldn't have been ever even had his, he shouldn't have ever even agreed to it. And so, yeah, basically just, you got to deliver. People want results. It's just results. It's a results-based kind of profession. And if you have a difficult time with, criticism or of dealing with people or taking, notes that people give you and stuff, like it's not going to be a good go, for you. Cause like that's the job. You don't get to decide everything. You don't get to decide everyone you work with. You sign up to do a band and then you meet the people sometimes. You don't meet everyone in the band, So like you got to be good at dealing with people, and you got to realize that like they're all people just like you are, and just like you want whatever you want, they want whatever they want. Difference is like they're paying you. You're not paying them any money. If I was paying the band money, then I'd be like, well, I want these songs. You know what I mean? That'd be like, but they're paying me. So like whatever they want is what matters.
Yeah.
And then obviously I try to do it in a way that I think makes me look good. But if I have to choose between giving them exactly what they want and maybe it not being true to what I want, I'll choose that every day. The goal for me is always to be like, okay, this is what you want. This is what I want. And I achieve both things without lessening how happy you are with the thing. So ideally, the thing that you want, even if it differs, you should be able to impart it on a record in a way where they're like, I didn't even know I wanted that. And when fused with the thing I had in mind, it's elevated to a whole other level. So like, that's the goal every time.
I guess to wrap it all off.
Yeah.
Where can we find you, and anything you want to plug?
Yeah, just, it's all my name. It's just StephanHawkes.com, Stephan Hawkes on Instagram, Stephan Hawkes on Facebook, StephanHawkes@gmail.com. You see, I'm very, very creative this way with my usernames.
I mean, you didn't even write your name.
Yeah.
Born with it.
I was born with it. I didn't even come up with it. Yeah. And it's just, I've got a submission thing on the website. You can email me. I mean, Lord knows I'm getting emails all day like everybody else.
So there you have it, everyone. Stephan Hawkes. You don't need to be a hawk to find him. Go give him some love. He's got some stuff coming out. You'll probably heard his records.
If you're crazy, you've probably heard a few.
They're good records.
Yeah, I'd like to think so.